Hi, my name is Jake, and I am a bookish drummer. So for today's video, I'm bringing you guys my November/birthday book haul. I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I either bought for myself in the month of November or all of the books that I was gifted to for my birthday. And I have a lot of books to talk about here today. I think it's around 30 or so I'm not going to waste any more time. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. First of all, this isn't a book, but this is probably my favorite gift that I got. Funkle, because I am now a proud uncle. I got to meet my nephew over the past couple of weekends. He's the cutest thing I've ever seen, and I am in love. His name is Henry, and he's the best. But now on to the books. I'm going to split this into 3 parts. The first part is going to be the books that I bought, the fantasy books that I bought. The second part is going to be the thriller/horror books that I bought, including, well, one of these books is not a thriller horror, but you'll see. And then the last part of the video is going to be the books that were kindly sent to me by my friends on BookTube, and that'll be my favorite part, so I can thank everybody officially. There's a lot of books to talk about, so let's just go ahead and get started. The first book I'm going to talk about in the fantasy section is a reread, or a book that I've already read. The Burning God. I had the hardcover edition, but I don't like hardcovers, so I went ahead and pre-ordered the paperback, and this came out, I think, in late November. So, yep, I went ahead and got that. It's the 3rd book in the Poppy War trilogy. Probably my least favorite book in the trilogy. Still a fantastic read, and I'm glad I have all of the paperbacks now. Actually, yeah, this is also a book that I have read before, but it's a book that I'm going to read again in January. Gardens of the Moon. It's the first book in the Book of the Fallen Malazan, however the hell you say that, by Steven Erikson. I'm going to start trying to jump back into the series in January. I'm going to start off with this book, and I do remember this book being good, and a lot of people online say that this is the worst Malazan book, but my experience was that I liked this book, and then books 2 and 3 I liked significantly less. So I do think I will enjoy this. Whether or not I enjoy books 2 or 3 when I try to jump back into the series, who knows, but I went ahead and picked up the first book. And then we've got more classic fantasy, I'd say, so let's go ahead and start out with The Dragonbone Chair by Tad Williams. This is just a used copy that I got, I think, from Thrift Books. And yeah, it's by Tad Williams, and I actually don't know quite what the story is about necessarily, but I do know that my favorite author, George R. R. Martin, pulled a lot from this series when he was writing A Song of Ice and Fire. I know it has a lot of parallels, and some people might even say that he ripped off Tad Williams. I'm not sure about that, but I'm very excited to jump into it sometime next year just to see what this book is all about, and just to see one of the many inspirations that A Song of Ice and Fire had. This is the first video that I filmed in a while, and I'm having trouble talking. But let's go ahead and jump into the other book that I got from Thrift Books. A Cavern of Black Ice by J.B. Jones, and this is the first book in the short Sword of Shadows. Man, I can't talk today. I've talked to one of my Discord members, Narsil, and he raves about J.B. Jones, saying that this is one of the best fantasy series and one of the best fantasy authors that he's ever written. It's supposed to be very brutal, and it's supposed to be just as good as something like A Song of Ice and Fire, if not better, which, again, it's my favorite series, so I'm very interested to read this book and find out what it's all about. Again, I'm not quite sure what it's all about. I do know that it takes place in a very harsh environment. Like, it's very, like, maybe like an Arctic setting where it's like very cold, very dreary, and you're supposed to be able to feel that very much reading this. So So I am interested to see what it's all about. So I broke a rule. I usually don't buy sequels to first books in fantasy series without having read them, but why not? It's Shortfall by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is the second book in the Founders trilogy, with the first book being Foundryside. I have yet to read that book, even though Robert Jackson Bennett is slowly becoming one of my favorite fantasy authors, having read I really can't talk today. The Divine Cities trilogy, with the first book being City of Stairs, one of my all-time favorite fantasy books. So, and it's got a cool cover, and I think it recently came out in paperback, so I was like, might as well pick it up. I am excited to eventually get to Foundryside. I have no idea when that will be, but this is the second book, because I'm sure I'm going to love it, because Robert Jackson Bennett is just really good. And then we got a couple books in one of my all-time favorite fantasy series. So let's just hold up both of them. Of Sand and Malice Made, and what's this called? When Jackals Storm the Walls. So these are books that are in one of my favorite series by Bradley P. Bulio, Songs of the Shattered Sand series. This is actually a novella, so it's very short. I think it takes place between books 1 and 2. I've never read it, so I'm very interested to see what this is all about. I think this is supposed to be more about her days in the fighting pits, if I'm correct. Might be totally wrong. And then this is book 5, and I recently read book 4 for the first time, and it was really good. It's just a very stellar and consistent series. I'm very interested to check this book out. It's significantly shorter than the rest of the series. I think this is it's about a 500-page book, where the rest of the books are usually around 600, 650 pages. And the way that book 4 ends, it almost felt like it could have, not really, but it could have ended the series. So I really have no idea where this book is going to go. So I'm very excited to jump into this at some point next year. And then probably one of my most anticipated releases of the year. I got it a few days ago. I pre-ordered it. The Bone Shard Emperor by Andrea Stewart. I'm currently rereading The Bone Shard Daughter, which is one of my favorite fantasy debuts of all time, and I'm very excited. I'm a little off schedule. I planned on reading this. I should be reading this now, but with Thanksgiving and family coming in town, I just really lost a lot of reading time, which is fine because I am now a proud uncle. But yeah, I'm very excited to read this. Slightly longer than Bone Shard Daughter, but it looks chunky, but it's only really it's only like 500 pages, so not too bad. I should be able to get through it relatively quickly, and I'm extremely excited to get to this probably at the beginning of December. All right, so those are all the fantasy books that I bought for myself. Now we're going to talk about the horror and thriller books that I bought for myself, and hopefully now that I've started to film a little bit, I can talk more coherently. So I'm not sure if I've showed off this book in past book hauls, but just in case, I'm just going to go ahead and show it. 3 Miles Past by Stephen Graham Jones. This is a novella collection that, I was going to say that I'm excited for, but I'm excited for all of his books, but particularly his novellas, because two of my favorite authors, George R. R. Martin and Stephen King, they're my favorites because they can write any type of medium of storytelling and make it compelling. Short stories, novellas, short novels, long novels. And Stephen Graham Jones, I know, can write great novels, but I'm very interested to try his novellas. And I read Mapping the Interior, and that one was very good. And this is, 3 Miles Past, so it's 3 novellas. I'm very excited to get to this sometime next year. And then this book I bought on Amazon, thinking that it was going to be a novella from one of my favorite series, the John Cleaver series. And it's called Next of Kin by Dan Wells. It's a John Cleaver novella. But look at this. Look at that. Look at that. That's so thin. It's basically a short story. And I didn't check how long it was supposed to be, but it's literally 30 pages. Luckily, you know, it's very cheap. It was like $6, I think. So, but still, I thought I was getting like a novella, like 90, 100 pages. It's a short story. So that's a little underwhelming. But unlike all of the John Cleaver books, this is actually written from someone's perspective that is not John Cleaver. So I'm excited for that. And I can't say who it is because that would be a spoiler. What do I have here? Oh yeah, let's see. This is a new Ray Bradbury book. It's a collection of some of his best crime stories. And looking at the table of contents here, I've read most, if not all of these. But I love Ray Bradbury. He's my 4th or 5th favorite author. And yeah, it'll be fun to jump back into these stories sometime in the future. And it's got it's a hard case crime book, which Stephen King has done a few of these, even though they're not hard case crime. These are actually crime stories, right? Or crime adjacent, who knows? But I'm excited to get to this eventually. And then this is a book that I've already read. But again, I don't like hardcovers. I prefer paperbacks. So I went ahead and picked up a paperback copy of You Love Me by Caroline Kepnes. This is the 3rd book in the Joel Goldberg series. Probably my favorite in the series because the humor in this book is just off the charts. It's so funny, yet so dark at the same time. It's such a blend of comedy and horror. It just works perfectly. The ending didn't really do it for me. It was a bit rushed and something happens and I'm like, really? But overall, it's a great book, and I can't wait for the 4th book, whenever that comes out. But now I have the paperback copy, and get rid of the hardback, turn that in for store credit or donate it, either way. And then this book I got from Barnes & Noble, and it's by an author that I read earlier this year that I really liked, and this would be Blacktop Wasteland by S.A. Cosby. The same author who wrote Razorblade Tears, which I very much enjoyed. Very dark and brutal and just very depressing book, but it had such great themes and messages that I couldn't help but love it. And I'm assuming this will kind of have the same feel and the same tone, possibly. I'm not entirely sure, but pretty much anything that S.A. Cosby writes, I'm probably going to pick up. I'm not sure how many books he actually has in publication. Ooh. And this actually is blurbed by Stephen King. A fast-paced, bare-knuckle thriller, he says. Usually I don't trust Stephen King blurbs because did he even read the book? Who knows? Because he spends all his time writing. But anyway, I'm excited to get to this book sometime in the future. That's my caveat with all of these. I have no idea when I'll be able to get to any of them. Except for this book. I know when I'm reading this book, funny enough, Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. This is a book that I'm going to be reading in February because me and Stacey, a good friend of mine from Discord, we're doing a February TBR swap. And this is one of her favorite books, so she's having me read this, and I'm very excited. Riley Sager is an author that I've been hesitant to try because I've heard mixed things. I've heard, really good things and then really bad things. But this is supposed to be one of his best. And it has one of my favorite book tropes, a book within a book. I love when books do that for some reason. Like Misery does that. And I'm blanking right now. But it is one of my favorite tropes. And yeah, I'm very excited to jump into this. And then a book of the month club pick that I don't even remember what month it is for anyway, but it's called The Collective by Allison Galen. I'm going to be buddy reading this with Sharon Dwyer in December, and from what I know, it's about like a group of women who have been, it's either that they've been abused by people or they've had people kill loved ones and they band together to get revenge, something like that. Either way, I picked it for a reason. Usually book of the month, there's like one, maybe two books that look good for me. So for me to pick this one, I had to have been drawn to it. It's got a cool cover. I love the red and black. And I am excited to see if this premise actually goes anywhere, because thrillers, they can be hit or miss. They're either really good or they're just kind of meh. So hopefully this one's really good. And then this is kind of the weird pick. I picked this up from my local used bookstore just because I think I got this for free. I don't know, but it's a hard case crime book. Who knows if it's actually hard case crime or not? But it's The Triumph of the Spider Monkey by Joyce Carol Oates. I bought it for the title alone. And kind of the weird looking cover. The dude's got a guitar and a fucking huge knife. Like, Jesus. Yeah. I literally have no idea what this book is about. I have no idea if I'll ever read this or not. But I own it. So, and then Confessions by Kyraminito. Again, this is a book that I'll be reading in February for the TBR swap that I'm doing with Stacey. Luckily, it's very short, and it's one of her favorites, and it's supposed to be very good. And I know a couple of other people that have read it. I think Sharon Dwyer's read it, and she really liked it. Hopefully I'm getting that right. Did you read it, Sharon? I don't know. I could just be making up shit. But yeah, either way, I've heard great things about this book. And I'm very excited to get to it in February. And then a book that I started reading, but I just was in a bit of a slump. And I quit reading this book because I just felt like reading a bunch of Stephen King novellas, which is great because I'm still slowly working my way through that ranking series that I'm doing. But I put this book on hold, and that would be A Slow Fire Burning by Paula Hawkins. And if you recognize that name, she wrote The Girl on the Train, which I read and wasn't a huge fan of. I think I gave it 3 stars. But her other book, Into the Water, was very good. And from what I've read of this so far, I've only read like the first 6 chapters. It feels more in the vein of that, where you're going to get a lot of character perspectives right at the start, and it's going to be kind of confusing, but you'll work your way through it and you'll figure out what it's all about. At the time I was reading this, I just was not in the mood for that, so I put it down, and like I said, read a bunch of Stephen King novellas. But I am excited to give it another shot when I'm more in the mood for it. Yeah, if it's anything like Into the Water, which I'm feeling it will be, I think it'll be another favorite of mine. And then the last horror book I have to talk about here came highly recommended from a lot of people. And that would be The Patience of a Dead Man by Michael Clark. I think this is supposed to be a very unique take on the haunted house story. Man, I really can't talk today. But yeah, this is supposed to be a trilogy, and a very good trilogy. And the first book is supposed to be very good and highly recommended from people like Sharon, and I think Andrea read it, and some other people read it. I don't know, I have a very bad memory. But either way, I'm excited to read it, and I was convinced to not get the omnibus because the covers for the individual books are good, and this is just like a woman with flies on her neck. So we'll see what happens with that. And the last book that I bought for myself before I get to the books that other people sent me is probably my favorite book that I've gotten this year. And it's actually not a fiction book, which is usually what I talk about. I don't read a lot of nonfiction. But I've been waiting to buy this book for such a long time, but it's $50, and I never, I'm very stingy when it comes to books. But luckily my mom gave me a $100 Barnes & Noble gift card, which I bought some of these books with that I've showed you. But this was the main thing that I bought with it. Whew, it's a chunky book too. It is Led Zeppelin, All the Songs, it's basically the story behind all of these songs. And like I said, it's $50, but it's a chunky hardback. And it goes through like the history of Led Zeppelin and all of their songs, how they recorded them, what they wrote them about, and just the process of doing all of them. I'm so excited for this, and it has pictures throughout. Let me see if I can open it up to a random page. Yeah, it's got pictures and just, I've been waiting a long time to get this book, but like I said, I'm very stingy when it comes to books, so I was not going to use my own money to buy this book. So luckily I got a gift card and I was able to snag it, and I'm very excited. But you know what I'm more excited about is all of the books that people sent me for my birthday, which is still crazy to me that people would be willing to send me books. And I'm very glad for that, and I'm going to show them off right... And these books aren't going to be in any kind of particular order, but I am going to start off with what Stacey sent me, because she also sent me something that's not book related. She sent me a very funny mug that I've been keeping all of my notes that people have been sending me with the books that they've sent me. So thank you, Stacey, for that. And she also sent me 2 books that I'm very excited to get to. Golden Sun by Pierce Brown, which again is a part of my February TBR swap that we're doing. And I'm going to be reading the first book, Red Rising, in January, which I've heard mixed things about, so I don't have extremely high hopes for, but I do think I'll enjoy it. A lot of people say that Golden Sun is their favorite, and I'm very excited to get to this in February. The other book that she sent me was Taylor Jenkins Reid, which is one of my all-time favorite authors now that I've discovered her this year. Books like Daisy Jones and the Six, Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Malibu Rising, Maybe in Another Life. And of course, I've given all of her books 5 stars at this point, so I am very excited to jump into this, even though out of all of the premises of the 3 books that I have left by her, this does sound the least appealing. I'm still very excited because what Taylor Jenkins Reid does is that she takes these characters and just writes them so well, and is very easily able to jump between comedy and drama, and I'm sure she does that well in here, so I'm very excited for this. So again, thank you, Stacey, for the books and and my mug, which I've been keeping all of my thank you notes in. So thank you, Stacey. And then Blood Song by Anthony Ryan was kindly sent to me from Andrew, from Andrew's Wizardly Reads. Thank you, Andrew. And this works out perfectly because I'm doing a buddy read with this in January with a lot of people, and I'm very excited to jump into this. I do know this is a trilogy, but apparently I think the first book is stellar, which I've heard a lot of people say, but then I hear it goes downhill from there. But I think it's supposed to be a good, maybe not a standalone book, but I guess maybe, because I heard a lot of people say that they're fine with just reading this book. So I'm very excited to jump into this in January. So thank you, Andrew. And then Kate from the Literary Apothecary was kind enough to send me Voice of War by Jack Argyle, a fantasy book that I've heard a lot of great things about from many booktubers. So thank you, Kate. I'm really not quite sure what this book is about, and even the blurb on the back of the book is very short and very brief. A soon-to-be father with a dark voice in his head, a sheltered girl addicted to threadlight, a young man whose life changes after he dies. Together they will change the world, whether they intend to or not. So very brief, but very appealing, and yeah, it just sounds like a really good book, and I'm very glad that Kate decided to send me this one. Thank you, Kate. And then Patrick, aka Daddy Starfish, sent me 2 books. One of them I've actually read so far, so I'll show off that one first. Trejo, which is Danny Trejo's memoir. And I read this book and listened to the audiobook, and it was stellar. I actually gave this book 5 stars. I had a lot of fun with this book. It's basically his life. It starts out with him in jail in the late 60s and kind of what he had to deal with in there, and then his life after dealing with addiction and overcoming his addictions and actually slowly introducing his way into Hollywood and simultaneously helping people deal with their addictions, which I learned a lot about Danny Trejo, stuff that I never knew about him. And he's one of my favorite actors because he's in a lot of like Robert Rodriguez movies, and he's one of my favorite directors. He's obviously well known for Machete, and he was in Spy Kids, which I saw when I was young. So he's a really good actor, and I had a lot of fun with this book. So, thank you, Patrick, for sending me a 5-star book. And the other book that he sent me was Pieces of Me by Kerrigan Richards, which is actually Patrick's sister. And so I'm very excited to jump into this. I'm not quite sure what it's about, but he did say that his sister put a lot of Patrick into the book. So like some of the characters have a little bit of him in them. So I'm very excited to see what she included in that. But yeah, I'm very excited to get to this sometime next year. So again, thank you, Patrick. And Josefina was kind enough to send me 2 books. One of them is The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman, which I've heard so many booktubers talk about being one of their all-time favorite books. And I'll be honest, Neil Gaiman, I think I tried to read American Gods and Good Omens, but I wasn't a fan of either one of them. But this book is supposed to be very different. It's supposed to be kind of literary dark fantasy or something along those lines. And I'm very interested to see what this book is about. It's supposed to be very dark. It's supposed to be very gripping. And it's also very short, which is good. So I'm very excited to jump into this. And she was kind enough to send me Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, which also works out perfectly because, yet again, this is another book in my February TBR swap with Stacey. And again, I've heard pretty much nothing but good things about this book. It's by the same guy who made The Martian, which I did really like that book and the movie. And I've heard not so great things about his other book, Artemis. But this book is supposed to be very good. It's also supposed to have like an amnesia trope, which I think I'm starting to like that trope more now that I've read some other books with it. And yeah, I'm very excited to jump into this book in February. So Josefina, thank you very much. And Johanna was very kind enough to send me Krampus the Yule Lord by Bram. And I'm very excited for this because back in October, I read his other book, The Child Thief, and also listened to the audiobook. Very much loved that book, and it came off of the recommendation from Johanna. She basically messaged me and said, "Oh, Jake, I think you're really going to like this book." So I was like, all right, I'll give it a shot. And I absolutely loved it, and I'm very excited to jump into this now that she has gifted me this. This one is also narrated by Kirby Hayborn, my all-time favorite narrator. It was the same narrator who did The Child Thief, and fantastic audiobook. And I'm very interested to give this book a shot, and I'm going to be reading it in December because it's Krampus, which makes perfect sense to read it in December. And of course, with Bram books, there's illustrations, and of course, the illustrations in The Child Thief were really good. And of course, it has illustrations in this one too. And let's see if I can get another one. Oh, it's got Santa Claus running away, so that'll be fun. Again, thank you, Johanna, so much. And last, but certainly not least, Sharon Dwyer, a good friend of mine, was kind enough to send me 3 books. Thank you, Sharon, in advance. One of the books she sent me was Undeath and Taxes, which is the second book in Fred the Accountant series. I listened to the first book in audio and very much enjoyed it. And I said that I was going to read them like one a month, but I just got sidetracked by a lot of stuff. But now I have the second book along with the audiobook, so now I feel more inclined to read this sooner rather than later. Very excited for this. And then a book that I've already started is What One Wouldn't Do, which is a short story horror anthology. And like I said, I've already started it. I don't love every single short story in here, but there have been some really good ones that I've fallen in love with. And a couple of poems And a couple of them aren't great, but one of them was actually pretty good. And, you know, with a anthology, you can't expect to love everything in it. But, like I've said, there's been some stellar ones in here. So I'm very glad that she decided to send me this. A lot of people, including Leslie from the Nerdy Narrative, have loved this book. And it's also really cool because at the end of every short story, the author kind of gives their intention about why they wrote it. And then the editor gives like information to like where you can go check out these indie horror authors. So very, very cool idea for a short story collection. Very much enjoying it. And then the last book I have to talk about is Scratches by Joshua Marcella. And this is a very short horror novella that I've heard a lot of great things about. Very excited to get to it. I'll probably just end up reading it in December. It's very short. And it's supposed to be very creepy, and I like creepy. So again, thank you, Sharon, for sending me 3 books. Very kind of you to do so. And, yep, there you go. And let me just get the pile here for y'all. Thank you, everyone who decided to send me books for my birthday. I can't even get them in frame. Here we go. Thank you, everyone who decided to send me books for my birthday. Very kind of you to do so, and I plan on reading all of these very soon. Again, just thank you from the bottom of my heart. All right, so those are all of the books that I either bought for myself or that other people have kindly sent to me for my birthday. Whew, it's 30 books, y'all. Hopefully in December. Oh, wait. Oh, yeah, next month is Christmas. Oh, no. Oh, no. People are gonna buy me more books, and I'm gonna buy more books. Oh man. I was trying to like whittle down my TBR, and I was doing so good this year. I got it down to like 150 of unread books. Now it's shot up to like 180, and then, oh man, it's gonna be 200 before I know it. Which is fine. But man. Yep, those are all the books that I acquired in some fashion in the month of November. Again, thank you everyone who decided to send me books. Very kind of you to do so. Thank you, thank you. Anyway, what did you guys think of this video? Have you read any of these books? Did you love them? Did you hate them? Are you excited to join me in reading any of these? Either way, let me know down in the comments below. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my YouTube channel and the Bookish Drummer Discord. And if you would like to further support me, go check out my Patreon and see what that's all about. And yep, that's it. Thank you so much for watching and have a terrific day.